Oh, here's a cold open. What's everyone drinking today?
White Claw, always.
I'm drinking this death metal red wine,
Nice.
13% alcohol.
Oh, you trying to have a good show today.
I do have wine with me as well, though.
I'm gonna be honest, I was drinking water before this, and then I was encouraged to drink, so.
Water straight, no chaser?
Straight no chaser.
What about you, Jordan?
I already knocked back my shot. I already indulged for the day.
Okay.
Because that was too strong.
Well, I here have Minute Maid peach punch with a shot of Malibu coconut rum.
Hey, bartender.
Right.
Bartender.
Listen,
And if you're looking for
whenever we have culture spring break, just know I'll be the one. I'll just okay.
Bro gonna be in here pouring drinks from up here.
He's gonna do the flippies.
Exactly. I'm gonna flip it around my neck.
No.
Fire shot.
No.
That's what I'm gonna do.
No.
Live from Brooklyn, New York. Come on, whoa. You're listening to the Culture 316 podcast.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode, specifically episode 18 of Culture 316. I am your host and producer, Jay the Creative.
I'm the other guy, Mr. Money and Magic, hashtag First Class Carter.
And welcome to another episode. Of course, we got the whole gang here. We got Nora in the building. We got Whitney. We got Whitney in the building, of course. But today, I'm gonna let Nicholas. Well, not I'm going to. Nicholas is driving the show today. So
Who is that? Who is Nicholas?
oh, I forgot. First Class Carter. Jesus Christ.
You do this to me all the time.
It would help. It would help if your. It would help if your Google Hangout name didn't say Nickel at the bottom.
It does. It says your full name.
It says your full name.
It's your birth name.
Address. With your
Social.
security. Credit card.
Well, that's not something I can change right now because this is my business. This is my school Gmail. This is you send all of the business stuff to this Gmail. Okay, we'll just start using my Angelo Carter Gmail then. But when the camera turns on, I am First Class Carter. That is it.
Nicholas is your slave name, essentially, is what you're telling me.
I don't know who that is when the camera is on.
Heard you. But all right, Angie, what's good? What's on the rundown today, bro?
Alrighty. So I'm introducing a brand new segment called hashtag the Curtain Jerk. So we all know the Curtain Jerk in wrestling is the opening match. So just introducing something to open the show, kind of make it real fun because the topic today is a little heavy. So, we want to keep it, light. At least now we'll start off with some light stuff. But I'm combining today's Curtain Jerk with Today in Wrestling History. So the day you guys are going to see this episode is 5 years to the day, WrestleMania 31 from the Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. Ooh. So what I'm going to do is we're going to run down this WrestleMania card. I'm going to give all three of you an opportunity to figure out who it was that actually accurately won the match. And if you get it right, I don't know, you'll get a prize or something.
So what you're saying is don't pull up the Wikipedia page on that.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Okay.
I'm gonna get all on.
Alrighty. So, the first kickoff match was Los Matadores, remember them?
Yeah.
With El Torito versus The New Day versus the Usos versus Tyson Kidd and Cesaro in a fatal four-way tag team match for the WWE Tag Team Championship. Jordan, who won this match?
Wait, what year was this?
This is 2015.
Okay.
I want to say Tyson Kidd and Cesaro.
Nora, who won this match?
I want to say the Usos.
And Whitney, who won this match?
I'm going with Tyson Kidd and Cesaro as well.
Well, for those who said Tyson Kidd and Cesaro, you are correct. They retained the WWE Tag Team Championships in 9 minutes and 58 seconds.
Glory to God.
The second and final pre-show match, because remember when there were only 2, because WrestleMania was only like 3 hours.
With 3 hours, yeah.
It wasn't doable.
We have the 30-man Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Who won this match?
Oh, Big Show.
Nora, who won this match?
I don't even know who was in the match. So
That's mad funny. They don't even give me everybody who was in the match. I remember off the top of my head like Miz Dow.
Dang, I miss Miss Dow.
I'm trying to think who randomly would have they tried to push in 2015. And it would have been somebody stupid like Big Show, but you would have been like, why? Because that was before like Braun was really a thing that they would just randomly throw in these things. I'm gonna say Sheamus, just because that's the first name that came to my head.
Well, Jordan is 2 versus 1 versus 0, as Big Show was the winner of the 2015 Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. All right, in the opening match, we have R-Truth, Luke Harper, Stardust, Dolph Ziggler, Dean Ambrose, Bad News Barrett, and Daniel Bryan in a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. This should be pretty easy.
I'm going to go with Daniel Bryan.
Same. No.
This is the one. Cody was dressed up as his dad, wasn't he?
Yes, this is the one where he had the polka dots.
This isn't the one Zack Ryder won?
No, that
was
is
the year
actually
before.
WrestleMania 32.
Oh, it was the year after. Who was in the match? I'm sorry.
All right, we have Bad News Barrett, Dean Ambrose, Dolph Ziggler, Stardust, Luke
Oh no,
Harper,
Dean won this one, didn't he?
R-Truth, and Daniel Bryan. No, actually, Jordan is 3 and Jordan is 3. What is it? 3, 1, and 2. I don't remember. Jordan is in the lead right now. Daniel
He's
Bryan
3
won the
for
match. This was Daniel Bryan's last WrestleMania until 34.
Oh, he retired.
Because this was right before he retired.
Yeah, he retired. What, like June of that year?
Yeah.
He retired in February of 2016, but June of that year.
Late.
Yeah, June of that year was when he went back in for surgery.
Okay.
These next few should be pretty easy. Next match, we have Seth Rollins with Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury versus Randy Orton. Who won this match?
No title?
Non-title. There was no title involved.
Randy.
Yeah, probably.
Randy Orton.
You guys are all correct, as Randy Orton defeated Seth Rollins with the now iconic curb stomp into RKO. That is pretty much the best RKO that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a fact.
All right, next match. In his first ever WrestleMania match, we have Sting versus Triple H. This one should be pretty easy again.
Triple H.
Yeah. Hometown Harry.
Yep, Triple H defeated Sting in his first and only WrestleMania match. In what some people think was the wrong decision, I quite frankly don't really care. Next match, we had the Bella Twins, Brie Bella and Nikki Bella versus AJ Lee and Paige. In the only women's match on the show, but not the only women's presence on the show.
I think
AJ and Paige won.
I want to say the Bella Twins.
AJ and Paige won that.
Yes, for those who said AJ Lee and Paige, they won by submission. AJ Lee tapped out Nikki Bella in the Black Widow, which is AJ Lee's final WrestleMania match, as she went on to retire. I think it was June of 2015.
Yeah.
Because that was a big deal because Paige had taken, that was like, I remember
Yeah.
that vividly.
And then that caused a lot because Paige was supposed to turn heel, but then it caused Naomi to turn heel and blah, 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 so on and so forth. I think everyone knows the last couple of, little results for these final matches. We have Rusev defending the United States Championship against John Cena.
Ooh, this is when he came out with the tank.
Yes.
John Cena won.
I love how she got so excited. She's like, ooh, John Cena won. Is this a unanimous answer?
Yeah, John Cena won that. Took that.
Yeah, John Cena won that and went on to pretty much hold the championship till SummerSlam, dropped it to Seth Rollins, and then won it again. And then dropped it to Alberto Del Rio a month later.
It was like seriously one of the best WrestleMania entrances though. He comes out on a tank with his flag.
It was so great.
So good.
This was back when Lana was his, little
Spokesperson.
yes.
When she was Russian.
When she was Russian.
When she kept that accent consistent.
And you actually believed she was Russian.
Until she didn't keep the accent consistent. The next match we have Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt. Yeah, like I said,
Undertaker had a cool entrance this year too, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. But
that was a daytime entrance, so probably not.
I think this one had a bunch of the like NXT babies that are now main roster on it.
Yeah.
I think.
Taker won that.
Yeah, Taker won because his streak.
Jordan, are you Googling this?
No.
He is.
No, he had a streak.
He's on the
I know.
on that Wikipedia page. Look at his glasses. He got that wiki up.
He got that wiki up.
I sure do, actually. All right, and the main event match was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns.
Do we even care?
Do I even need to say it?
Oh, God,
do we even need to do a question on this one? No. All right. Seth Rollins defeated Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar in triple threat, first time ever. A superstar cashed in at WrestleMania, and he went on to hold the title until November when he dropped it due to injury after trying to do I think it was a sunset flip to Kane, and he completely tore his knee up. So yeah,
one of the best cash-ins ever, though.
Yes.
Like when he came running down that ramp with his briefcase.
So great, and I was a giant Roman Reigns guy.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was a huge Roman Reigns guy, and even I was like, yeah.
This is fire.
Heel Seth Rollins with the blonde streak. Like, that was the...
You know what, though? I actually really hate Seth Rollins' hair because, like, you can tell, like, he's put so much product in it because the way when he sweats, it clumps.
It doesn't move.
Yeah.
It doesn't move. Like, it's so bad, and it clumps up, and it doesn't move. And it's just like, oh, Seth, baby, you got to cut your hair off and just regrow it. It's unhealthy.
It's like he like sprays Aquanet in it while it's wet. Like, it's
And
so
then it doesn't
bad.
help that these guys put a bunch of conditioner in their hair to get it really like curly and give it the wet look.
And it's
and
like
then,
you've got straight hair. Like it's not gonna.
And then by the end, once the conditioner dries, it dries your hair out. So then it's just like, it's bad. Anyway. That was the first ever Curtain Jerk segment. Hopefully we can do more of these little cute quiz segments.
Definitely.
You know, it'll be kind of fun. Alrighty, so our next segment is hashtag that damn Rona.
That damn Rona.
The Rona. So we discussed last week that COVID-19 canceled a whole bunch of stuff, including WrestleMania. WrestleMania in Tampa was moved to Orlando, the site of their performance center, and was to be taped over the course of this past week, and was taped. And Ryan Sapp reported, I believe it was Thursday morning, or maybe it was Wednesday night, something like that. Same thing. All the days bleeding together at this point. I'm tired of being in this house.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns decided to pull out of his WrestleMania match against Goldberg for the Universal Championship, as well as any more of the Performance Center shows due to being immunocompromised because of his battle with leukemia. Allegedly, Dave Meltzer also said that The Miz showed up to the taping sick, which upset the Usos and then prompted Roman Reigns to pull out. Apparently, the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match will be changed. The rumor that I heard was a one-on-one ladder match, John Morrison versus one of the Usos. So, I don't know. Yeah, very weird.
That's super weird.
There are other superstars who were also removed from the WrestleMania card due to sickness or otherwise being quarantined that include Dana Brooke, Rey Mysterio, and Bobby Lashley, who was on a promotional tour in South
Wow.
Africa and was put on quarantine. It's not known if he's sick. Dana Brooke was reported sick.
Of course, Dana Brooke
So
was
she's
sick.
been so she has been
Fucking
dropped
Dana.
from the six-way women's match, and it is now a five-way, which is what is that? Bailey, Naomi, Sasha, Lacey, and Tamina. And as of this past Thursday, Orange County, Florida, forced all non-essential businesses to close, which includes the Performance Center. They will be discussing reopening. I think they said April 10th, but as of right now, I think WWE has recorded up until the Raw after WrestleMania, and then after that, it's just kind of scattered. So I want you guys' thoughts on this kind of whole situation. What do you think of WWE still doing shows? How do you think this is going to affect AEW as well?
I think WWE has a lot more backlog that they can provide us with than AEW. So on that one, they're going to have WWE is going to have no issue compensating things, where AEW may have issues compensating things. But as far as like moving it and pre-recording it, it was 100% the right decision. My biggest fear with everything being in Tampa is like knowing that community so well and knowing that everybody is old, or 50% of that community is probably over 50 or undocumented. Like, plain and simple. And those are the people that are at highest risk because they're either in the rate that is dying, or they don't have health insurance. And I mean, it was the right decision. I think pre-taping a lot of it was the right decision too, because now, what if they hadn't pre-taped it and Orange County is completely on lockdown?
Right.
Like, what would we have been doing next weekend?
Right.
So, I mean, it's a situation nobody can say what's right or wrong, because literally never has happened. I mean, we've had major outbreaks of things, like you have swine flu or SARS or whatever, but never on this scale and this fast and this.
Right.
So it's one of those situations where how do you go about it the right way or the wrong way? I mean, we're clearly going, the United States as a whole is clearly going about it the wrong way, but that's a different topic, a different day.
That is right.
But I think WWE surprisingly has handled things to the best of their ability without just dipping out and being like, okay, we'll see you in September.
Right. Who's next? Oh, I guess me.
What an awkward pause.
Right. Nah, I thought Nora was gonna go next, but whatever. Yeah. I think that it's really. I think to kind of piggyback off of what Whitney said, WWE is going about this the complete right way. As far as pre-recording everything and pre-recording WrestleMania, I think that is interesting. First of all, Mike, I'm not even going to call you Ms. I'm going to call you Mike. Why are you showing up to work if you know damn well you don't feel well? At a time like this, when you're in a work environment where there is somebody that has been known for dealing with leukemia, meaning that his immune system is not where, the average athlete is, and you're putting him at risk just by showing up, why are you showing up?
Well, and his treatment was way harder than a typical chemotherapy treatment is going to be, because he did such a high intensity treatment for his leukemia that it's like way harder on your white blood cell count. So another topic for another day.
Whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But why are you showing up to work if you don't feel well, especially at a time like this? Obviously you want all the performers to be safe, so I'm sending all my well wishes to everybody that is not feeling well or is uncertain about showing up to WrestleMania because of just like illness or a pre-existing health condition. Of course, Dana Brooke. Of course, Dana Brooke. You've been talking about Batista all year. You've been asking for an opportunity all year. And then the one time you get on the big show, somehow, some way, you mess it up. And yes, I'm saying you messed it up because you got it. What? But once again, WWE's kind of handling this really, really well. As far as how it will affect AEW, don't like to kind of piggyback off of what Whitney said. WWE has a lot more backlog than AEW. It's just like I don't know what AEW is going to be able to provide for the next. If this lasts, I don't know how long they'll be able to provide content that will kind of sustain them throughout this outbreak, especially since we don't know when this is going to end. But WWE has a lot more leverage. They can air old pay-per-views. They can pre-record shows. They have so many options and things at their disposal. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to kind of see how everything moves forward, especially with like AEW and stuff like that.
AEW's what, at 5 pay-per-views now? 5 or 6?
Yeah, about 5 or 6 or so.
I also I'll also agree with what everyone else has said. I think they're doing the right thing with pre-recording. I think that they probably should have cut wrestlers earlier on to like avoid this even being a thing. Because why do you even have them out here performing, knowing that a lot of them probably do have weakened immune systems with like the amount of things that they put into their bodies, the amount of stress that they put into their bodies, and the amount of traveling that they do.
Right.
So, that's what they do. I think AEW, while they may not have all this backlog that WWE has, they, I think, do a really great job at providing digital content. So it might not be wrestling matches, but I think that they can still continue to do digital content online. And I think also we just don't know when this is going to end individually at a state level, but like we might go into full lockdown. Like we don't know yet. We might be in Italy. So regardless, I think no one can prepare for what's going to happen. Never happened before. So.
Yeah, I pretty much am in the same headspace as all of you guys. This is something that has never happened before on this level.
Ever.
So I definitely think that both companies will. I don't think that it makes sense for them to keep doing. And I'm talking AEW. I don't think that it makes sense for them to keep doing live shows. I think that they should take something from WWE's book and just start recording like the next maybe 4 weeks of shows. Because if people are talking, if doctors are talking like this could last for real, like really bad to June, then you might want to at least record to the middle of May as much as you can without stressing your wrestlers out to the point of like exhaustion.
Right.
But my only issue is like, again, you have these wrestlers who, even though the top of the companies, like the people have said, you won't lose your push if you don't show up. I think it's just the mentality that that you're not breaking out of. Like if you don't make it to the show through hell or high water, you may well could just lose what it is that you've worked for.
Right.
So I just think it's a mentality that they have. The Miz. We forget the Miz has been in the business for 15 years now.
Right.
What was it, 2005?
Yeah, 2005.
Yeah.
Then clawed his way to be that main event.
Yeah,
star.
The Miz. Yeah, and the Miz has. We know about the Miz. Like the Miz has scratched and clawed his way. Like that man was, he went through a lot at the very beginning of his career, but I think he's really earned the respect of his peers, and now he's pretty much in the space where he could be some sort of a locker room leader, and you don't want to lose the respect of your peers, but at the same time, this is a situation where, listen, your health comes first. I saw a video of this woman who's a nurse, and of course, this is like going off in a bit of a tangent, but last night there was this video of this woman who's a nurse who quit her job because her manager put her on the corona floor, but she is also immunocompromised because she has had different health issues. So, I just think that it may be hard to break out of this mentality, but it is something that at this point today kind of needs to just be kiboshed because, again, we don't know how long this is going to last. But we want to know what you guys think. So please comment below, tweet us, follow us on Instagram, stuff like that.
All
Ooh,
that good
while
stuff.
we're plugging Instagram, go do our bracket because I'm going to start doing that tomorrow. And, like,
Yes.
breaking
We're
that
doing a
down.
bracket of the best WrestleManias. So on our IG story, what days?
I'm going to start tomorrow because that should get us to Friday for the final
Okay.
round.
So
If I did my math right.
starting tomorrow, we will be doing in our IG stories, we will be doing a poll of the best WrestleManias. We'll be putting 2 WrestleManias against each other. And it's basically our version of March Madness because March Madness was not a thing this year.
I personally missed having a bracket to fill out, so I made a bracket to fill out.
And that's it. That's it.
Why it's there.
Period.
Alrighty, and getting to pretty much our main event segment of the episode.
Here we go.
Alrighty, so in 2009, the Vice Network started a show titled The Dark Side of the Ring, which is a docuseries which covers a lot more of the darker and more mature things that happened in the pro wrestling industry. So their season 2 premiere covered the Benoit tragedy of 2007. So for the people who may be watching, who may have started watching wrestling way after the Benoit stuff happened, for those who don't know the basic gist, over a 3-day period, June 22nd to June 24th of 2007, Chris Benoit murdered his younger son, Daniel, and his wife, Nancy, before taking his own life. The documentary covered many events leading up to the weekend, including his time in Stampede Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, his time in WCW, meeting and marrying Nancy, Eddie Guerrero, when he met Eddie Guerrero, and Eddie Guerrero's death. Chris Jericho, Jim Ross, Chavo Guerrero, the sister of Nancy, Sandra Toffolini, Chris's first son David, as well as many other experts in the concussions were interviewed. So I have a couple of questions here. So we're gonna just kind of go down these questions in order. So first, I want to get you guys' overall thoughts of the 2-parter. Personally, for me, I thought it was very insightful. So I've said this on the show many times. I started watching wrestling at the end of 2008. So that puts me a year and some change after the Benoit situation happened. So I knew of the Benoit situation because people had mentioned Chris Benoit. And I'm like, who the hell is that? And then, Google works. So I
Google
Googled
works.
him and, was like, oh, okay, I can't read this. This is really dark. I was like 11. And so, yeah, for me, it was very insightful, especially Eddie's death. Because, again, I started watching wrestling way after Eddie's death. So, very insightful for me. But what were you guys' overall thoughts on it?
I think it's interesting. So I actually stopped watching wrestling around 08 and didn't start again until 2016. So for me, this was like bringing back a lot, especially because Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit were 2 of my favorite wrestlers, both my brother and I's favorite wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
So it gave a more mature look at it, right? Because I had to have been 10 or so when this happened, maybe a little.
Yeah, I was like 16.
Yeah. So I must have been older, but I guess I didn't fully comprehend what happened at the time, and it was confusing. But I think Vice did a really great job at making this documentary. I was actually really impressed. I did think something that was interesting was we didn't see any representatives from WWE.
That's a fact.
Yeah. Which I get it, but I also thought it was strange. But overall, the documentary I thought was great. I think it was important to make it 2 parts.
Yeah.
Definitely. I was gonna say, as it pertained to like the dark side of the ring. So, I've been a wrestling fan avidly since 2000 and late 2003, early 2004. So I was started really getting into it like post WrestleMania 20, and WrestleMania 20 was, the moment at the end of the show.
The moment,
Benoit,
right?
Benoit and Guerrero hugged in the middle of the ring. Guerrero run with the WWE title. Benoit with the World Heavyweight title. And I think Benoit's title win was a little bit more it was a little more important because
it was the main event.
It was the main event, and on top of that, Benoit was misused in WCW and kind of worked his way up through the ranks of WWE, and was kind of part of that class of guys who weren't necessarily the biggest, but they were amazing in the ring. So that encompassed like Eddie Guerrero, that was Chris, that was Dean Malenko, that was Chris Jericho, guys like that.
Oh yeah, Dean Malenko was also interviewed.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention him.
And he was also like, they were also all that part of that class that were like misusing WCW and were like big stars in WWE. Like 2004, 2005, even if you didn't know Eddie's backstory and Chris's backstory, you can see how important Eddie was to Chris. You can see how important Eddie was to that locker room. And then when in 2005, when Eddie passed away, and there was that tribute show, and I remember very, very vividly, I can recall not one wrestler not crying during their interview. Specifically Chris. Chris broke down, and you could just tell he wasn't the same. After that event, he wasn't the same. And Chris had more title runs. I believe he defeated Orlando Jordan at SummerSlam for the U.S. title the following year. But he just wasn't the same. And so you saw Eddie pass away, and then you saw Chris pass away, and then he had this big tribute, and then WWE never mentioned his name again following the night after, when Vince made that announcement saying that we will, considering everything considered, we will no longer be making reference to Chris Benoit through WWE programming. I feel like Vice did an amazing job with kind of highlighting both sides, because part one, it was like, wait a minute, something's up. He may not have done it. Part two kind of confirmed that he did it, but it also kind of highlighted the reality of CTE. And it kind of added that perspective into it, and kind of showed us that something that Chris was dealing with is something that a lot of other wrestlers deal with, as far as that brain damage, because of all the physical harm that they put their bodies through in the ring. And I didn't even think about this. This man's finishing maneuver was a flying headbutt. Yeah. Imagine 300 nights a year you are diving off the top of a ring, headbutting another man or woman, because of Attitude Era, in the head. You are headbutting somebody 300 times a year. That is not something that is good for your health.
And I forgot his name, but one of the guys, I think that he was a wrestler and then went on to become like a CTE specialist.
Yeah.
He was talking about kind of the cycle of the people who would do this headbutt, and now this guy can't walk, and this guy has to use a wheelchair, and now this guy CTE, it's crazy how he was just, highlighting how, and the chair shots and all that. We'll get into that later, but I want you guys to keep going.
I think the craziest part was, the thing that wrecked me more than anything was like towards the end where David was crying and you saw Chavo come in and comfort him, because at that moment I didn't see David and Chavo. I saw Chris and Eddie, because David is a literal splitting image of Chris Benoit, and Chavo, God bless him, because he's had to deal with both of those deaths. I believe is like a physical kind of representation of Eddie and the rest of the Guerrero family. But I love how Chris Jericho was able to unite David and his aunt. Shout outs also to AEW for letting Vice film at their event, because Vince was not going to let that happen. Vince was not going to let them film at a WWE event. So the fact that the Khan family allowed them to do that, and Jericho, wanted to play.
Jericho's the narrator for this season of The Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah,
he's the narrator for the rest of the episodes.
Yeah, I didn't even know. I thought he was just a narrator for this.
No, he's a narrator for this season.
He getting that.
Yeah, I really like that moment too. I thought what was really the moment that really stuck out to me was David, when he was talking about the day that it happened. He was like, yeah, I kept getting a phone call. My mom kept getting a phone. I saw it, like, in his eyes. He was replaying
he replayed that.
He replayed that moment every second. And it was like literally seeing it through his lens, which I thought was like insane. it was that was insane to me. Um,
I just,
yeah,
you don't talk a lot about mental illness in sports, period. Whether it be something that comes from trauma like CTE or, grief and the issues that that can cause mentally on a person. And Vice did a great job of looking at that perspective because you don't see big macho people, whatever sport it is. You don't look at them and think, oh, they're struggling with depression or they're struggling with anxiety or whatever. And
right,
they broke it down and they were like, not only was this man dealing with this, and they talked about his brain and like how advanced the CTE was in his brain, but then to also like he never recovered from Eddie's death.
Right.
Like he never
never.
recovered from that and the role that that had on him. And everybody's saying it, like, you've got Vicky saying it, you've got Nancy's sister, you've got his son, you've got Chris, and everybody's saying it. And, like, he never was the same after Eddie passed away. And that we don't talk enough about mental health, especially in a male dominated world like sports. I mean, you look at, what was it, Cousins that retired last year, and everybody was like, oh, what's wrong with him? Why is he retiring? Because of his mental health and the like toll that takes on you physically and mentally as a person to have that schedule and to keep up with that. And they talked about like the paranoia he was facing and like all of that stuff that plays in. And
yeah,
it was a very, I don't, bewildering is not the word I want, but it was a very like revealing side of things that you don't consider when you're watching these people and you're like, yes, this is so great. It's a very different.
Yeah.
I thought one of the more interesting, well, not interesting. Well, for me, I thought this part was actually kind of funny, um, in kind of like a I feel you way. When at the end, when Sandra was like, when the producer asked her, like, do you think one day you could ever forgive him? And she's like, one day I want to be there, but she's like, but that won't be today. And I died because I was like, because I literally said it in my head right before she said it. I was like, but it ain't gonna be today. And she said that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm laughing at that." But like, though, that's real. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's real, and I'm really happy that it wasn't like it didn't seem manufactured. Like,
It was actual people talking about the
yes,
situation. Like
yes,
it so many times with documentaries, especially on things like this, it's like a doctor and you can tell there's a teleprompter behind them, or they've rehearsed their lines of, well, this is what CTE is. No, it was people in their raw emotions, like reliving those moments.
I think
And
the part that really kind of broke my heart was when Sandra kind of spoke about how the Benoit side of the family was like, "Oh, she doesn't want to speak to you," and then, but they thought that that side was like, "Oh, we don't want to speak." Like the miscommunication that happened after it, and which pretty much broke off Sandra
David.
from David and his daughter,
Right.
and which I was like, "Wait, he has a daughter?"
Zeke.
Since when? Hello? But and then I did Google because Shorty said kids, and I was like, kids. But I didn't think about it. I just thought Daniel for some reason, but I'm like, no, Daniel is dead. What? And then I Googled it. But yeah, so here's my next question. My next question was, what are, since pretty much everyone here, except for me, of course, were watching wrestling during Eddie's death, like, what were your memories from that time? Like, how did it affect you as a wrestling fan? I know that Sasha Banks told the story that she got tickets to see Eddie, and she shows up to the show with his sign, and they're like, he died, right? And she's at the episode of Raw, the tribute episode for Eddie. So I think that's just so hard. That's just so sad to me.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
dang. But what are you guys' memories from Eddie's death?
So I think for me, it impacted, or for both my brother and I, it impacted us highly just because I think I've talked about this before. Wrestling was the first place on TV that I saw people that were like me, right? So Eddie and Ray and Chavo. It honestly around that time, the only thing on TV, except probably for like the George Lopez show or whatever, that represented us.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think it made us so prideful of our culture.
Mhm.
Um, So when he passed, like I remember like my brother was crying, I was crying. My brother did not recover for like a month or so. He couldn't watch wrestling because he was so sad. And for me, it was like I think it was the first time, honestly, that I had to process death of something that I love so much.
Right.
It impacted me highly because after that, like there wasn't as much representation, and I mean, Ray was still on, Chavo was still on, but it wasn't the same, right?
Yeah.
That's how it impacted me.
I,
Yeah, I like kind of, what was it, 2005 when Eddie died?
Yeah.
So I was in middle school and had kind of like fallen out of wrestling, but I still like would casually follow. And like
Yeah.
Eddie was just that person, like he drew everybody in. So it's like Nora was saying, the first time that you like process death of somebody that like you related to on a level, because Eddie was just, no matter what he was doing, everybody gravitated to him, and like he's somebody that you enjoyed watching. So then to like, I remember watching the tribute episode, and you're just like trying to process this all, and you're like, wow, this really happened, and it was like, 90s kids went through a lot of crap.
Yeah.
Like,
definitely.
we had the Y2K and we had September 11th, and like you kept those things, like somebody like Eddie Guerrero is that safe place. And then all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, what is happening? You
Yeah.
don't think it's ever going to happen, especially if he was so young and so in the prime of his life. Like, it was crazy. It just, yeah.
I remember when I found out about the death of Eddie, I was just so confused because it was so jarring and so shocking. I remember the last match that Eddie had was against Mr. Kennedy on SmackDown, and it was a qualifying match for a title shot, I believe. And it was like an ordinary win, and you just thought, all right, we're just gonna see Eddie next, Thursday night
Just normal
SmackDown,
storyline.
just normal storyline. But then on Sunday night, was when I found out that Eddie had passed away, and I was just like, nah, Eddie, like Eddie did no, like he
Yeah.
had like he's wrestling next Thursday, like this is all just the work, like, and it was like, no, he passed away, like he's gone. And it was just like so jarring and so shocking to kind of to piggyback off of what Nora was saying, just that representation. Eddie was kind of the representation, like he was the centerpiece of that Latinx representation on WWE programming, because at that time he was the only one with a world title under his belt. He was, WWE champion. He was in major storylines. He had and it seemed as if Eddie could do no wrong. He had earlier that year, he had a storyline with Rey Mysterio for the custody of a child, and made it compelling. That was Eddie Guerrero. That was how important and how good Eddie Guerrero was. Face, heel, either you paid to see him win or you paid to see him get destroyed. But like, I think that like the impact that it had, it just wasn't settling with me, and it wasn't settling right with me. But I think that going forward, we saw an impassioned locker room. We saw someone in Rey Mysterio get the push of his life. And at that point, everything was for Eddie. Everything was for Eddie. And
Yeah.
you could tell that every wrestler wanted to perform better than they ever did in honor of Eddie Guerrero, because he meant so much to that locker room. He meant so much to the individuals in that company. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'll never forget when Batista came down there and like Batista's crying.
Yes.
Like, oh, and he just like puts his hand on the car, like that. That's a moment, like I still want to tear up thinking about it, because like you're looking at Batista and you're like, Batista's the baddest guy on planet Earth, and
Right.
you're watching him
Especially at that
cry.
time.
Yeah, like nobody was bigger or badder than Batista in WWE at that time. Like, and you're watching him and you're just like, this is real. This isn't a TV show anymore. This is real life. Like,
Right.
yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, watching it definitely gave me a lot of insight into how it really did affect. Like, of course, again, when I first started watching and first learned about all these guys, I went back and like Googled and looked up a lot of like the situations about their deaths and stuff like that. And I've watched the Eddie tribute show before, and it's like super moving. It's super sad, but it's also really moving
Right.
because you have an entire roster of people at that time who are together for one person that impacted all of them in a specific way. And I really, really love how much they all kind of banded around him and how much they loved Eddie. Um, you know, it's crazy, and I don't want to keep making this comparison. I don't want to keep like seeming like I'm using this for clout or anything, but I feel like I got a sense of that at the Hog No Limit show for
With
Matt.
Matt, yeah.
I got a sense of that. Like how the guys just kind of got were there for him, and how everybody was there for Eddie. It just like it's really moving. It's really impactful. So my next question would be, I'm gonna kind of like move these around a little bit. So jumping over to the actual time of the incident, what are your memories from the news, from kind of that 24-hour period of finding out that Chris Benoit died, the tribute show for Chris Benoit, and then the next morning finding out that no, Chris Benoit, did all of these horrific things. Like, how did your kind of how did it happen for you guys?
So I wasn't big into wrestling at this point anymore because I think, like a sophomore in high school and had kind of like fallen out of it. Because I grew up in the Attitude Era and through like the 90s and the early 2000s. So like I got to high school and kind of fell out of it. And I obviously knew who Chris was. And that was also really around the start of the 24-hour news cycle that we know and hate today. So yeah,
No and hate. Yes.
it's because it was more about who could get the headline first and less about
Right.
what's actually happening.
Right.
And it very much, the news lost the humanity of it. And that was the nice about the Vice doc, is it's like, oh, Chris Benoit killed his wife and his kid and he's psycho. But like, no, he was a man struggling and a environment that doesn't want to recognize that struggle and wants to tell you just toughen it out. And very much this is what pioneered really the talk of CTE and what led to those chair shot changes and what led to those things changing, like the flying headbutt, and recognizing more, not just in wrestling but everywhere, taking more notice on things like headshots and tackles in football and the way baseball helmets were made, and even boxing and the way boxing hits are thrown. It changed a lot because of how severe the CTE was in his brain. And it was a very, I mean, there's so much going on in the world in 2005 that
That's a fact.
Yeah, it kind of took a back burner to a lot of things, but at the same time, it wasn't just wrestling that we watched change because of it. It was so many sports changed because of it. Like, I mean, football changed majorly, and they changed the way that tackles were called because of the stuff that came out in the CTE reports because of Chris. And so it was one of those things where you're like, never in a million years did you think Chris was going to be the one to do it. And then you're like, oh my God, this guy's a monster. And then you're like, wait, no, he has serious issues he's dealing with. And it's not Chris Benoit that did that. It's his brain that he no longer knew how to function with.
Right.
So it was a lot to process in the world of 2005. And being a 15, 16-year-old, trying to process all of that while the rest of the world is also starting to go to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
It just the 24-hour news cycle, man.
It's a lot. It was a lot. It was definitely one of those things that was just like a lot to handle, kind of the same as what Whitney was saying. Like, to go from hearing about somebody's death to you mourning that person's death to you being told you need to forget everything that you heard in the past 48 hours about Chris. It was just like a lot to take in, because at that time I was 11, so it was just like a lot to take in and a lot to process, because it's just like, this guy was my favorite wrestler, and like then you hear about this horrible thing that happened to him, and then you realize that the horrible thing was him
Right.
doing it. And so it was just like a lot to take in and a lot to process. But like the show goes on, right? I feel like the fact that WWE kind of said that Chris wasn't going to be mentioned on TV, I don't want to say that it helped, but it kind of did in a way, because since there was no mention of him, there was no, if you didn't know him, there was no motivation to mourn. You know what I mean? So like the fact that WWE was just like, don't say his name, don't da 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 da. I understood that, and you know, but it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. It was a lot to process. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's again losing someone that I kind of looked up to, grew up watching, and these men were like people that you're just like, they're untouchable, they're amazing. You see the friendship, you see what they do for the community, and you're just like, this is dope. And then you're mourning that, and then to find out, oh well, he killed his whole family, and
Right.
took his own life. I think especially for me, coming from the background that I come from, that was hard, right? So coming from a background where there's domestic violence in the house, and then hearing that that's how his family passed, just like kind of messed me up, because it's like I spent all of this time escaping my reality by watching wrestling and
growing up, that's your
love
biggest fear.
people.
Yeah.
And then this is what happens, and then you start to think, well, was he ever a good man? Like, what was happening behind closed doors? And this is
Right.
me being what, like 13, if it was in 07.
Yeah, 2007.
This is like a 13-year-old trying to process all of this, to then having the show that he was on doing kind of like a tribute, and then going, never mind, just kidding, and completely wiping him, right? So it was interesting to process. It was also, like Whitney said, they kind of took the human aspect out of it. So we didn't get the news as fast as we get it now. And also it wasn't something that was being publicly shared from like off the bat. Like we didn't know that he had CTE. We didn't know all these
Right.
things. So I think it was interesting for me, and it was interesting to process.
Yeah. It's very interesting kind of to hear you guys' perspective. Sorry, I got a text message. Very interesting to hear you guys' perspective on that. You know, it's something that, you know, you only really you remember exactly where you are when you heard the news.
Right.
That you know, what happened, and then you'll remember where you were when you heard, forget what you heard, this guy's a murderer, we're not paying any attention to him,
Right.
forget about it, you know. So yeah, so my next question, finally something I can answer. How big of an impact did you think the Benoit tragedy had on the WWE and on the wrestling business? Personally, I think that they escaped what the real issue could have been, by Vince McMahon kind of doing the deflect, deny, or, you know, kind of completely removing himself from the situation.
Chris Benoit, never heard of him.
Right, never heard of him. And while, yes, they should have absolutely checked on David and Sandra, they should have, you know, did something for his family at the time. But this is something that could have single-handedly destroyed the wrestling business, period.
Right.
Not just WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, even as far as Japan, probably New Japan will probably still be around, but like
it would have taken a hit though, because he had his touch in New Japan.
Right. So it could have destroyed the wrestling business, like, for good. But so I think that a lot of the moves that Vince McMahon made were very lateral business moves. Like, I'm not going to associate myself with this, because if I talk about this, then that's opening up a can of worms. That's opening up a box that I don't want to open up.
Right.
And you open up that box, you go deeper into it. And then there was talk of WWE using steroids and blah blah. The guys there using steroids and blah blah blah. And then of course WWE introduces the wellness, like the this new version of the wellness policy, um, with the the strikes and the three strikes you're out and the whatever stupid thing that it is. And it has worked, for since 2007. I mean, we have seen a lot of guys go, get fired for it. A lot of guys have
Suspended.
gotten three strikes and
Go
then gotten one
figures.
erased. Or, the last time we got like a big bust was 2016 with Paige. And I don't know, of course, we don't know if it was like a drug bust or anything crazy. It could have just been a prescription for Adderall or whatever.
Right.
Or pain medicine. But it was Roman Reigns, Paige, Alberto Del Rio, Eva Marie. It was like, and somebody else, I think. It was like a
5 or
bunch of
6
them.
of them.
But what are you guys' take on, like, what do you think, how different do you think the WWE would be, or how much of an impact, that was the question, how much of an impact do you think that this had on WWE and the wrestling business?
Who wants to go first? Because I don't.
I'll circle
Yeah.
back around to what I said last time, and it changed. It's what brought the conversation to CTE to the forefront. Plain and simple. It started that conversation, and it's changed not only wrestling, but it's changed the whole sports world.
Right.
And recognizing that CTE and mental health is something that needs to be addressed. Regardless of how big and strong and tough a guy seems, you can still struggle with these things. And it is what brought CTE to the forefront, not just in wrestling, and changed wrestling moves forever. I mean, that's, you started seeing the way chair shots were taken changed, and
Right.
like the hits people were taking in the head, but you saw it also change across football and baseball and the way helmets were made. And it changed sports, because when it came out, okay, he didn't just snap one day and go crazy. Like, this is a serious thing, and this is what's causing it. Because he was like the first brain that they really got to look at for CTE, and the doctors were talking about that, saying like, we've never seen CTE this advanced, and this is A, B, and C where it's coming from.
Right.
And it changed. I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, who knows the tragedies we could have witnessed past that, or how. I mean, we could be looking at guys like Chris Jericho now, in the career he's had, could have been cut way short, and he could be in a wheelchair if those rules hadn't come through. And so it's horrible that it happened, but at least there's that benefit to it, and it's
Right.
not just completely senseless and without. There's the Vice documentary did a real good reason of putting, or excuse me, a really good reason of putting the reason and the explanation to it without being like. It restored the humanity in it, where you never had really gotten much of that before. Of, okay, yeah, it's CT, but they broke down and they explained like, no, like, you don't understand how bad it was in his brain. Like, we've never seen it this bad in somebody at his age, and through all the horrible, I can't even imagine what his family and what his kids have gone through all this, like his kid and like sister-in-law and all of that, and friends. But at the same time, at least they know everything wasn't in vain, and it changed not only wrestling for the better, but all of sports.
So I semi-agree. I think that regardless if this would have been the incident, it would have been some incident. So I don't know if y'all watched the Aaron Hernandez documentary on
I've been
Netflix.
meaning to watch that.
It's so good.
Yeah, so he also had what they said was the most severe CTE for someone of his age that people have ever seen.
Mhm.
So I don't think, if it wasn't Chris, it would have been some other incident.
Mhm.
In terms of how it changed the WWE, yeah, I got rid of the chair shots, but we discussed this. Like, the WWE still works their like talent to injuries. This past year, how many injuries did we have? And then
Right.
people would come back, hurry their medical leave, come back and get re-injured, and they're back out again. Like, how many wrestlers do we currently have out on injury?
Very
Plenty.
true. Yeah.
It comes in a different form, right? So now it's not chair shots, but now it's like, in a couple of years,
A
people might
lot
not be.
more knees and ankles. And
Yeah. I also, I know that it was mentioned the wellness policy, whatever that is. I don't think it's not enforced as much as it should be, at least in my thought, because these people are still getting title run, they're still getting goals. And it might be like a 3 strikes and you're out, but still, like, how positive for steroids and then get pushed as soon as you're back. So I think for them it was more like we don't want to lose money, we don't want our reputation to be tarnished, and that's why they stepped away. I don't necessarily think it was for the wellness of the rest.
Right. To kind of piggyback off of Nora, if it wasn't this incident, it would have been something else. And I feel like while it did encourage WWE to kind of beef up their wellness policy, I also believe that that like WWE is a sports entertainment company, and part of the entertainment of wrestling is violence. And we've seen the form and the art of violence kind of evolve over the years. We've seen the incorporation of Japanese strong style into American wrestling, which is brutal. Sometimes can be a little bit more brutal. I mean, I remember watching a video of Shibata literally headbutting somebody, and then he just bled.
He
They
almost
put him
died.
out.
He almost
He can't
died.
wrestle anymore.
He can't wrestle
Shibata
anymore.
cannot wrestle anymore.
And
He literally went. Oh, I can't talk about that because I watched that match.
So it's one of those things where it's like violence evolves, and like the kind of representation of that evolves. So if it's not a chair shot, it's something else, right? Because we want to, like WWE and other wrestling promotions want to kind of show violence as an element of the storytelling that WWE specializes in, that professional wrestling at large specializes in. It's interesting because of the case of Chris Benoit and how tragic it was and how it was kind of painting him out to be a savage. It's not like one of those things. It's not like an Eddie Guerrero where we still see the Three Amigos suplexes, where we still see the frog splash, where we still see the whole framing somebody to cheat as opposed to them while lying on the ground. There are shreds of legacy, of Eddie's legacy, still being done all over wrestling. Yeah. Chris, not so much. And that's partly because I don't think anybody wants to represent that, with the exception of David, right?
David, which we'll discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it really, his case affected not just wrestling but sports at large, because it put the conversation of CTE to the forefront. But Chris himself, because like he offed his wife and his kids, so it's just like one of those things was like, not
I mean, and we discussed kind of Eddie's legacy during our Eddie tribute episode back in November, I think it was.
Yeah.
You have wrestlers now, which, of course, I'll pick any opportunity to mention Sasha Banks, who basically wore his gear at WrestleMania 32. You have Peyton, who wore his gear at this past WrestleMania. Again, like you said, the Three Amigos, Sasha Banks, whenever she gets a chance, she does the frog splash. Eddie's legacy is still pretty much at large. Shaw Guerrero is still a wrestler. Like she may not be in the WWE right now, which I definitely think that eventually she'll make her way back.
Absolutely.
But she is, still in the business. This is still something that she wants to do. So, yeah. So as far as that goes, my next question was, if Chris Benoit is still alive today, if none of that happened in 2007, if Benoit's still alive today, how different is sports entertainment? How different is the WWE? What are you guys' thoughts?
I think. Who's gonna go first?
I was just gonna piggyback off of what Nora said before that, where like if it wasn't Chris, it was gonna be somebody else. Like it was a matter of time. The CTE issue was a ticking time bomb, not just in wrestling but in all sports. If it wasn't Chris, it was going to be somebody else. It was going to be Aaron Hernandez. It was going to be if not him, it was a ticking time bomb of who's next,
Right.
of who else is.
Gonna go off of that.
Yeah.
But to kind of go off of Nick's question as far as like what would the WWE look like today? If we're being honest, I feel like after the passing of Eddie, Chris's career wasn't really what it used to be. He got his last kind of crack at, being the main event player in 2004 when he was the World Heavyweight Champion. But 2005 WWE was a WWE that was looking to put John Cena and Batista at the forefront of their programming.
Right.
They were the established stars. They were the main guys. So I could have seen Chris kind of maintaining the mid-card on Raw, maintaining the mid-card on SmackDown, and that was about it. Maybe he probably would have gone to AEW and be a manager or a coach. Or, I feel like him and Dean Malenko kind of had the same path, and by the time Chris's death came around, he already had a lot of years on his career. He was probably going to retire within the next couple of years anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that we could have definitely seen Chris more in a coach role or whatever the case may be. But, I don't think that it wouldn't have been that different. I think it would have been a lot more different if Eddie was still around, because I feel like Eddie he was still in good health, and he probably would have given, a good amount of matches to a good amount of people here and there. But I don't think it would have been the same for Chris.
I think
Eddie would definitely be looking at like a Chris Jericho situation with Eddie.
Yeah.
I feel like I agree with Jordan. It was mentioned earlier on that after Eddie's passing, Chris just wasn't the same. The energy wasn't the same. So I agree, mid-card. He'd probably be like Ray that comes on every now and then when they need someone, or like one of these wrestlers that come on when they need someone to push one of the younger talent. And I think he was like bound to get injured anyways, the way that he was wrestling and putting his body on the line.
Oh yeah, he was a full. I mean, when you were rewatching that and you watched some of the things he did, like you completely forgot that his finisher was the flying headbutt, and like thinking about that. Is it Lars that tried to do that and everybody was like, bro, what are you doing? Because that's just,
There was a lot of things that Lars was doing that I was saying, bro, what are you doing? Well, I wasn't calling him
his
bro.
Whole career.
His life. Including his porn career.
Oh God.
Okay.
Remind me.
Dirty Lars.
For me, I definitely think the wrestling business, like you guys said, if it wasn't him, it probably would have been someone else. But I do think the business would be kind of different. I do think that, I think that the situation would have blown up a lot later, and it would have blown up a lot larger. Because I think it probably would have been a lot more people. You know what I'm saying? And it probably wouldn't have been a situation as big as this. It probably would have been as far as like a wrestler taking their own life or something like that. I don't think it would have been something as heavy as this. However, I do think that the business would be a little bit different with him still alive. For one, we'd be able to mention WrestleMania 20, because I actually think that main event match is so good. I watched it a couple of months ago. I gotta watch it again. But I watched it a couple of months ago at work, and I was sitting in the break room, and literally as he won the match and the confetti starts and he lifts up the title, starts crying, I started crying, because that's how that like story really grips you. And of course, I've watched Chris Benoit matches before, but like I had no like knowledge of the storyline that happened prior. I had no real like attachment to this match. So I was like, dude, like this match was great. Like match was so good. But I do think the business would be a little bit different. I do think that he'd probably be a coach, and if it's not NXT, which I feel like he would have probably stuck with NXT. I feel like he's just one of those guys who was loyal to people who were loyal to him, and WWE was loyal to him. I feel like Triple H would have probably given him a nice coach role in NXT. I feel like he would have been one of those guys on like a Dusty level at the very beginning, in the FCW
Right.
slash NXT beginnings. I think, and if he's still alive, this definitely impacts my next question for you guys. So, David Benoit. David Benoit is his oldest son from his first marriage. And David has basically expressed that he wants to be a professional wrestler. I believe we've talked about this on the show before.
We have. We definitely have.
I
Like
think,
a month or two ago.
Yeah. So he did a show with Chris Van Vliet. And I do remember talking about this because he did the show with Chris Van Vliet.
Like
He
in
talked about how
January?
much he wanted to be a pro wrestler. He said in the documentary that he still loves pro wrestling, that his dad is still his hero, and that he would like to go to AEW. Of course, he said he wanted to go to AEW because, as said in the documentary, in the events after the funerals, WWE kind of, I guess you could use the
Dunked
word
him as a
abandoned.
child.
Yeah, I guess you could use the word kind of like forgot about them and kind of, went along with their own business, which I can't personally say is right, but I understand why they did it.
Right.
And there was the part in the documentary which I actually thought was really interesting with JR being there, and Sandra was like, I knew it was a work, and cussed his ass out. And I thought it was interesting because I was like, JR? I feel like if Vince was there, it probably would have been different.
Yeah.
But I get it. You're at a point where you're angry, but I definitely think that, it would have been nice for. Now we don't know if we can only assume that Chris Jericho and got Sandra and JR to speak with each other, considering JR works for AEW and Sandra and Thingy were at, I think it was Full Gear. Sandra and
David.
It was either Full Gear or Revolution. One of those two shows. And
It was Full Gear. I remember the background.
okay, well there you go.
I remember seeing the stage in the documentary. It was the Full Gear stage.
Yep, it was Full Gear. Okay. So he has expressed how much he wants to be a wrestler. Again, in his Chris Van Vliet interview, he said that he wanted to use his dad's old theme music, get tights designed like his dad's, and go by the name Chris Benoit Jr. I have a lot of thoughts on this, so I want to open up the floor for you guys to go first. And yeah.
All right, so boom, nah, and nah. Cause like
I'm dead.
what? What? Like, I get it. You want to be a professional wrestler. Your dad's your hero, and rightfully so. Anybody who has a father who's really great at what they do and anything wants to be like their dad. But your dad kind of offed your mother, your stepmother, and your sibling. So it's like you and on top of that, when you talk about pro wrestling, when you talk about sports entertainment, you're talking about a business that is consumer driven, that is exposed to the consumer for the sake of the prosperity of said business. So it's just like, what do you think the consumer is going to do? How do you think the consumer is going to react when they hear the theme song of a guy who is known as a murderer? Like what? Like, yo, I hear that, I'm leaving the arena. Like, are you?
Yeah.
I'm out, gone.
Well, like, I mean, it's a very. I grew up in a domestic violence home, and it's a very triggering subject where if I was not in the mental place I am today, where like I can handle talking about those things, if it was me 5-6 years ago, I would have a full-on mental breakdown at a show, knowing that that's what's happening, because it's a triggering situation, and it's domestic violence is something that happens to a lot of people,
Right.
and it's a very triggering reality to a lot of people who turn to sports for an escape from reality. No matter the sport, no matter the form of entertainment, that's what you do, especially kids. And you look at how many kids love wrestling. And it's you've got a parent taking a kid to a wrestling show, and they go into a full, it triggers something in them. It's just, I am all for him wanting to wrestle. I love that idea. I love the idea of people following their dreams and their passions and what they love. But be David, don't be Chris, because that's such a triggering situation for people, that his music and stuff, where you don't know how a person's going to react to that. Because not everybody is in a place where they can talk about past traumas, or is in a place where they're safe and removed from those situations. And it's just such a bad idea. Like, I can't imagine any producer anywhere being like, yes, this is a good idea, let's make you Chris Benoit Jr.
Well, Vince would do that, but
Vince would not do that.
Vince would do
Okay.
You are David Baritone. That is your name. Your music is completely different. It's pop punk. Like, I am all for him, but especially with him looking so much like his dad,
Whew.
just I can already see the people getting triggered and like walking out of shows and just having full like, yeah, just not. I'm all for you following your dreams, David, but that is not the way to go about it. Be David Ratatouille, like.
David Ratatouille.
David Ratatouille.
Nora, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think in the year 2020, where we have the Me Too movement, where we have cancel culture, he would just be ending his career.
That's a fact.
I think there are places where he can take his father's like influence and put it in and make it into his own. But I think to completely try to, what it kind of seems like is that he wants to kind of reap the benefits of what his father's name was, but that's just not the reality with. I mean, like, imagine someone Googling, like, oh, I want to know more about this wrestler, and they Google his name, and his dad comes up, and they have.
And you're just watching the news.
Right.
Yeah. But I also think that the demographic of wrestling has changed a little bit more, so a lot of people maybe don't necessarily remember Chris Benoit and what happened. But I think it would still end his career. I think it'd be very controversial. I think if that's what he wants his career to be and like wants it to be very short, then I guess. But I don't think it's a good move. I think that he could be his own individual and just recognize the influence that his dad had on this journey for him, and people would be okay with that because at the end of the day, it was his dad, and it is his hero, and you know, he also lost his dad to this, regardless of the situation. But yeah, no, don't do that.
All right. Everybody spoke, right?
Everybody spoke.
Okay. So here are kind of my thoughts on the situation. I absolutely agree with everyone. The answer is no. The answer is no. I think, you know, he expressed wanting to go to AEW, and I could see why you would want to go to AEW. You know, David said in the documentary that the only people who ever reached out to him were Chavo and Chris Jericho, which I find kind of weird because I know he's friends with Natty as well. Maybe he just couldn't mention Natty because she's a WWE wrestler.
WWE contract.
Yeah. So I mean, he probably could have went by her real name, or said one of the whatever. But he didn't mention Natty. But I do know that they are friends in real life. Natty, in fact, just posted a picture of her
and David
with Daniel, which like, oh my God, drove my emotions to like the ends of the earth because I was just like, Daniel was adorable. But anyway, like I said, the answer is no.
Yeah.
You know, he expressed he wanted to go to AEW. AEW is a company that is very new, and as much money as they have behind it, they would never survive something like that. AEW would go under in 2.5 seconds. And I really, really do hope that Chris Jericho has spoken some sense into him. Like, dude, you cannot do that. Like, you know, it just isn't smart. AEW was founded January of 2019, right?
Yep.
Right?
New Year's Day 2019.
1119.
1-1, right, exactly. January 1st. 1/1/19 was the beginnings of AEW. AEW is 5 pay-per-views in. They are what are we on? Month 5 of their live shows.
Yeah.
October, November, December, January, February, March. 6 months.
Yep.
We've been getting 6 months of live television every Wednesday. I just don't. It just literally could never happen. Like the minute that music hits, the minute something sounding like that music hits, the minute someone goes Chris Benoit Jr., it's a wrap for this guy's career. You know, he may be able to get on some low budget indie show from some guys who really don't care about the wrestlers.
Because
you
I
know.
can't even see like a bar wrestling, GCW, or anything like that wanting to
Would
be
never.
Would
It
never.
would never fly.
controversial. They love being. That's an envelope they don't want to touch either.
It's like reopening Pandora's box, and you don't want to do that. You know, as much as you know, I know that he wants to be a wrestler. You know, there's also been things that have been said, like a couple of like people in the business who have owned schools have been trying. I believe it was Lance Storm, but do not quote me on that. Have had schools and go, come, I'll train you, and he has bailed. Like he hasn't completed training. Now I don't know if that's still the case as far as March 28th, 2020. But as far as what I knew back in January, he's not a trained wrestler, and oh, you know, it is what it is. Like, you know, it's great to want to follow your dreams, but you're not a trained wrestler. Like, no one's gonna give you a handout. You know, it's not like. And I was saying this to one of my friends a couple of days ago. He's not a Flair,
Yeah.
and you know, and that is not any way me taking away any of Charlotte's um, accolades. Charlotte earned those on her own. You know, Charlotte is a bad bitch. That's it. But Charlotte Flair is a name that somebody can go, oh yeah, because Ric Flair, y'all, people have accused him of everything, but there's been no proof, so we can't say nothing. Ric Flair is the most beloved wrestler on the planet.
On the planet.
Even more than The Rock, even more than Stone Cold. Ric Flair is the most beloved wrestler on the planet. David is not a Flair. David is not a Johnson. He's not a part of the Anoa'i dynasty. David is not a Hart. He's not somebody.
Not the Rock's daughter, who now has mentioned her interest.
Right, right. Which is why I said he's not a Johnson. He's not a Johnson. He's not part of the Anoa'i family. He's not a part of any of these wrestling families. David is unfortunately the
Benoit.
product of someone who did something really bad, and it sucks that he got bullied for that, and it sucks that he was attacked for things that his father did. And you know, it's the classic sins of a father story, you know.
Yeah.
But I do think that if wrestling is something that he wants to do, I will never ever on this planet knock somebody who wants to be a wrestler, because how could I do that and my ass hasn't been in hog wrestling school since November 2017? And how could I do that? I can't judge anybody who wants to be a wrestler. I can't do that. And I can't judge him for not getting up off his ass and doing it, because guess where I've been? On my ass for the last 3 years.
Life happens.
And life happens, right? But my point is, I can't judge him for wanting that, but he has to change his going about it. You know, maybe he can wrestle without a mask. I'm not gonna be that guy who goes, he has to wrestle with a mask because he looks like his dad.
Right.
Maybe he can wrestle without a mask. You know, people will look at him and go, what's his name? If he doesn't wrestle as a Benoit, which I don't think he should at all. They won't even mention his stepmother, who should absolutely be in the...
Oh, Nancy, woman, whatever you want to call her, 100% should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes,
100%.
absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame.
100%.
But, you know, I definitely think that he needs to really think about the decision that he wants to make as far as being in the business. and as far as what kind of wrestler he wants to be. So, and my final question, which the answer is no, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Should Chris Benoit ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame?
No, that's it.
No. Nancy, yes, because what woman did, no one will ever do again in wrestling. And you can say what you want, but woman was woman. Nancy, 100% woman, even if you want to put her in there as woman, so you don't have the attachment of the Benoit name. Because woman did what no other woman will ever do in wrestling, what no woman before her did. Like, as much as they've tried to recreate that through people like Paige or Lana or whatever in the modern sense, nobody will be woman. Like, plain and simple. Chris, especially in today's society, never. And
Yeah, never.
it sucks because you have to remove and look at, yeah, he had a great career, and like it'd be so cool to see him in there with Eddie, but you can't ignore what happened. And as much as you can say that wasn't Chris that did that, it was still mentally, it was still Chris that did that, and that is still attached to his name regardless until the day WWE ends and wrestling is over forever. Chris Benoit will be attached to that history. So, woman, yes, put her in there as woman so you don't even have to have the attachment to the name if that's what you need to do. Chris, I can't see a world from 2020 forward. I can't see a world where the people would be like, yeah, let's put him in.
Yeah, you're right.
So I agree he should not be in the Hall of Fame. I believe that Nancy should be. And this might be a hot take, so get ready, y'all.
Ooh, culture hot take.
Yes, I do believe that Chris should at some point start to be mentioned with the WWE again. It doesn't have to be in a celebratory way. It doesn't have to be in a highlighting way, but you're just missing such a large time span by just completely erasing him. And the WWE truly just needs to get to a point where they're comfortable playing and taking that as a, this was messed up. This sucks. This is part of why this happened. And this is what we're doing to ensure that we don't ever get to this spot again.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll ever happen when Vince is still around, only because I think there's too much pride and there's too much attachment to that.
Right.
But I think eventually it needs to.
I agree with all of you guys. I actually agree with that hot take. I actually think that they should at some point begin to start mentioning his name. Again, he's in one of the most iconic WrestleMania moments. Once we get to WrestleMania 40, which really isn't that far away.
Yo, it's 4 years away.
Yeah, WrestleMania 40 is 4 years away. You know, I think if you are talking about the most iconic WrestleMania moments, which I
That moment.
which I think is our show topic for next week, is iconic WrestleMania moments. Because I was just gonna mention some, but I'm like, why? When we can talk about it next week. So, but yeah, when you talk about iconic WrestleMania moments, that is up there at the top. Like, I think that's one of the top iconic WrestleMania moments.
Absolutely.
Along with a Becky from last year, and stuff like that. So, but we can discuss those more at length later on. So, yeah, I agree. Chris should definitely start to be mentioned a little bit more. Like I said, WrestleMania 40 is coming up. If they're gonna start mentioning, if they do a video package that's like counting down the most iconic WrestleMania moments, that has to be one of them. And even if they choose not to, it's fine because they have an influx of them to accommodate for that. But it has to be one of them. So I think that Nora is right in that sense. Woman should definitely go into the Hall of Fame. I do think that she will at some point, but what I think they're gonna do is they're gonna do it like how they do their Hall of Fame class. That's just like the pictures of people that are like the extended, like the honorable mention type style. I think she'll end up being like one of those. and it'll just be like a graphic with her picture up,
I think
and
she's
then
gonna
it'll
go in
just
with a
be,
tag team, like the way that China got inducted with DX.
Yeah,
That's probably the way that woman's gonna go in.
did she
that's what I
manage
was
like
thinking.
was she like a really big manager for a tag team?
Yeah, I forgot which tag team, but she was a manager for a tag. She had multiple clients,
Oh,
but like
Yeah,
so she's probably gonna
Chris
go in with
wasn't.
one of them.
okay, yeah, definitely. Because I knew that because from the documentary, I knew that it was Kevin Sullivan and Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho. What the hell am I talking about? Chris Benoit. Um, and Kevin Sullivan, like hell, is going in the WWE Hall of Fame. So,
It's
and
either going to be a tag team situation or it's going to be
an honorable mention.
rest his soul when Vince passes away. Triple H will be like, hey, you know what we're doing? We're putting in China and Woman this year.
Right. I mean, listen.
Because we know China's not getting that solo mention until Vince is gone.
Yeah.
I could definitely see Hunter putting China in as a solo.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
So-
Once he takes over the company, 100%.
Yeah, so that is pretty much the show. If you guys have any comments, anything that you guys would like to add as far as you guys, any other things from the documentary that stuck out to you?
I just really want to compliment Vice on the way
Yeah,
they handled
yeah.
it because it's a very sensitive subject, and wrestling fans are very
Critical.
judgmental.
Yeah.
Critical. Trying to put it in a nice way, but wrestling fans are intense, and they handled it very well. They, from even the B-roll cuts that they did, were very well vignetted, and I mean, the people that they chose for the interviews, like having Chris Jericho in there, somebody who is the backbone of the wrestling business at this point, regardless of what promotion you're into, whether it be AEW, WWE, or New Japan. Chris Jericho is a name that is still, and you have people like him and Jim Ross who were at the forefront of that situation and going through that situation, and you know, they did a beautiful job of handling something that could have been either very mishandled, misinformed, or made him out to be like this horrible monster and not address the real issue, which is
Right.
the CTE and mental illness behind it.
Right. Yes. I mean, I would definitely shout out Vice as well. Vice. I mean, like this is not the first time Vice has put out a great piece. The whole Dark Side of Wrestling, the whole Dark Side of the Ring series is fantastic.
It's all on Hulu now too, which I believe at least the first season's now all on Hulu. So
like the stuff they did about the Montreal Screwjob, like all of it is just it's spot on. So I would highly recommend anyone who's a wrestling fan to watch those series of films because Vice has done a really good job on not just this one but of all of them. So yeah, big shout out to Vice.
Sorry.
also, I got stuff. I know I've been kind of MIA on social media this week, but lots of stuff for WrestleMania week coming up, including the bracket voting will be going on. I've been making some stuff because Photoshop is finally on the iPad. Praise be to Apple and Adobe for that because it is so nice to use it again. So I've been working on stuff like that and doodles and all kinds of fun stuff to roll out here over the next week with kind of the change of it's not a lot like WrestleMania was last year where we can profile a match and talk about a card because we don't necessarily have matches to profile and a card to follow like we did last
We
year.
don't even know. And I was debating when we were going to do our WrestleMania prediction show, considering it probably should be
Thursday
right
or Friday
before.
have to go up.
Yeah. So I do want to say that next week, hopefully we'll have something big in store for you guys. Next week is Culture 316's third anniversary. We started in 2017 doing live shows
On
every
Facebook.
Thursday on Facebook Live. And we have then evolved into this beautiful show that Jay the Creative edits for us every week.
Including this 90-minute one because this is about to be a
This is a long show, but it's going to be a great one. So yeah, please be on the lookout for any like pretty big announcements from us next week. But my computer has been working overtime. I don't know if y'all can hear That's my computer because it is fanning this hot air. Okay? So, yeah, we are done. So here are my three you know, as usual, my three things that I have to say to y'all. Number one, wash your hands. Number two, when you go outside, stand 6 feet away from people. Only go outside for things you absolutely need. Okay? Three, do that home workout. Watch that Netflix show that you've been missing out on. I mean, as far as I go, I did it all already. I did all the home workouts. I finished all of Netflix. I finished the whole thing.
Everything.
I finished the whole Hulu. I finished it. I did it. Oh, I did it already. I did it already. But there's that. Those are my three things, and then y'all can recite it for me. Don't let this bird app get you smacked in
In
2020.
2020.
Yeah, there was a rumor that they were going to release bookmarks on Twitter today, and I was like, listen, first of all, I don't need anybody to see what I have bookmarked on Twitter. And second of all, people are starting rumors on Twitter about Twitter just because they're so bored.
Bored.
Don't let
Nothing to do. All right, guys.
Bye, y'all.
We love y'all.
Bye.